This is the Free Heel Life Podcast, episode number 62. I'm your host, Josh Madsen, coming at you from the Free Heel Life shop in Salt Lake City, Utah. And it's good to be back, my friends. It's another fine week in Free Heel Life land, and I've got an awesome episode coming up today for you. But first, let's hop into a couple pieces of news. It's that time of year. 22 designs bindings are now on sale. So if you've been waiting to get your Outlaw X, your Vice, your Axle, get on it. So go to freeheellife.com. 22 designs bindings are on sale now, and we love your support. Thank you so much for shopping with us. Events coming up. Midwest Telefest is happening the 12th through the 14th of February. And guess what? We're sending two guys out there to be with all of you at the Porcupine State Park in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Guess who's going? Old Telly Tay. We're sending him to the Midwest for the first time in his whole life. So Telly Tay will be there, and our head ski tech, Wyatt Daigle, will be there as well. And so they're going to be there helping our service and demo center tech, Keith Opperman, and they will have a Free Heel Life demo tent with skis to try and boots to try and answer your questions, and it's going to be great. So I hope you guys out there can show them some of that Midwest nice and get some turns with them while they're there. So again, February 12th through the 14th, Porcupine State Park, UP of Michigan, near Ontonagon, Midwest Telefest 2021. Socially distanced and ready to jet. So if you have any questions, you can shoot us a message and we will try to do our best to get you the information. If you want a demo before that, or you need service in the upper Midwest from a certified Free Heel Life ski tech, hit us up at customer service at freeheellife.com, and we will put you in touch with Keith Opperman, who is up there in Wisconsin and can help you with all of your needs. This is one of our beta tests of our service and demo centers. We're trying to spread out the Free Heel Life love into other areas so that we can start bringing that service to you in a more close proximity sort of way. Such a great time. And thanks for those people that have picked up demos so far. It's been really cool to see it work, and we're slowly figuring it out as we move along. So today, my guest is the first Briton to win a world championship medal in telemark skiing and is a 6-time British champion. She's achieved 5 World Cup telemark racing victories across all 3 disciplines and has 32 World Cup podiums to her name. She joined the British Ski Academy as an athlete at the age of 12, competing as an alpine skier. And after becoming the youngest British ski cross champion ever at the age of 15, she made the England Freestyle Ski Team in 2009. It was during this time she started telemark skiing, a discipline for which she showed potential on a far larger scale, competing in 2011 at her first World Junior Championship. She was invited to the World Junior Championships after the British Telemark Ski Team spotted her results in the French Cup series following her frequent podium appearances, and she's been on the team ever since. During the winter, she bases herself in Chamonix, France, and is currently training for the World Cup season and the World Championships. So please welcome my guest, Jasmin Taylor. All right, Jasmin, welcome to the Free Heel Life Podcast. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing well. It's good to have you on the show. I'm a faraway fan of telemark racing, so I'm excited to have you on. You're actually our first telemark racer ever on the podcast, so this is good.
Ah, well, there we go. Have you had any Europeans on? Or
oh yeah, well, you are you're not the first UK guest. You're the second, but you are the first racer. And I'm trying to think. Yeah, what other stats? We've got Italy. We've had an Italian on. We've had Norwegian. Do we have Norwegians? No, I've had a Swede on. I'm trying to think. We're doing
you're going to have to find a Norwegian for sure.
Yeah. Oh, no, I did have a Norwegian. Yeah. I had my buddy Hamish on. He's actually a Kiwi that lives in Morgadal. So he kind of counted for both the Kiwis and the Norwegians at once.
Yeah. He ticks the box. That's okay then.
Yeah. It was good. But cool. That's good. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm fine. I'm actually in France at the moment, so in the Chamonix Valley in Les Ouches, and it's confusing, to be honest, because the lifts are closed, but we're still able to train. So athletes can actually access the pistes, and often they open just one run for us, and we can set gates and skate and train like normal almost. So in some ways it's really good, and then in some ways it's quite weird because the restaurants are closed and the shops are kind of open but kind of not, and yeah, it's very unpredictable at the moment.
Yeah, no, it's a strange time. That's even got to be stranger that you guys have some access and then like it's not really happening around you. So that's wild.
No, it's strange, but we have managed to do quite a bit of cross-country skiing because obviously with the racing element of Telemark, you have the cross-country skate. So it's been good that we have full access to the cross-country pistes. And also people can ski tour, snowshoe, that kind of thing. So it's not completely shut down, but yeah, the main ski lifts are actually closed.
Wow, that's so crazy. Well, I want to get in. We're going to get into the Telemark racing portion because you've got a lot of responsibility today to bring people up to speed on that. But I want to go back to how you got into Telemark in the first place, because I think, and when I had my other guest from the UK on, I mean, when people think the UK, they're probably not thinking like massive mountains and getting into telemark skiing and whatnot. So I'm kind of curious because I don't know your backstory, and I'm kind of curious about how you found skiing, mountains, and I mean, obviously you guys are close to the mainland Europe. You can go there, but did you grow up in a family of skiers, outdoor people?
No, I didn't. So if I take you back to the very beginning, I was 10 years old and I was in my last year of primary school. So I don't know what the equivalent would be in the US when you're, I actually have no idea what you call it. Is it high school? And then what's the junior school? What do you call it?
Yeah, it's like you're probably like saying like sixth grade. We have like our secondary school is usually considered high school. We have like sort of an in-between one too, like middle school or junior high school. So you have like primary school, like like kindergarten through sixth grade. So how old were you? Like 10 years old?
10 years old, yeah. So if you can imagine the countryside in England and a small village school. So as a 10-year-old, one of my last projects at this school, we were given a mountain project, and we had to do a speech on mountains. And the mountain I happened to choose, and it was completely random, but the mountain was Whistler in Canada. And the Olympic Games at the time were very close to being, I think they were coming up that season. So I had lots of content around the Olympics and just around the resort in general. And I got so into this project, so obsessed with the mountains, that my parents actually said we could go there maybe on holiday. And I think my dad, he said, well, if we're going there on holiday, we should get Jazz some ski lessons. So this is probably just mad to the US guys hearing this, but there's pretty much in every big town in the UK, there's a dry ski slope, and these things are about 150 meters long. So I went along, and I'd go every Saturday, and I'd have a ski lesson. And eventually, I got into their club, into their race team, called the Suffolk Vikings. I mean, it's completely bonkers, actually, if I think about it. But I improved quite quickly doing it, and we were just alpine slalom skiers, and you'd have a slalom race which lasted, I think, 12 seconds for the best. And it's honestly bonkers. And then you have these regional competitions within East Anglia in the UK, so the region where I'm from. And I started to get on the podium in these regional races. And then I developed up to the national races, and I managed to get some podiums in those races. And my dad would always give me an incentive, and he'd say, okay, if you do this, then you can ski on snow. And if you achieve this position, you can go for a week. And he'd say it thinking that I wouldn't actually achieve it. And then I would somehow manage. Often I'd get a bit lucky, and I'd then end up with the opportunity to go away skiing on snow. And that came in the form of an academy. So in the UK, the way skiing works is, at least in the alpine ski racing world, there's a series of academies. So the British Ski Academy, Ambition Ski Academy, Evolution Ski Academy. So you select one, and then what happens is you go and train on snow. So GS, slalom, Super G as well on occasion. And you do schooling in the afternoon, fitness in the evening. And actually, I'm pretty sure you have academies like this in the US as well. So I was at one of these, and it was there that this random French guy called Seb turned up and gave a telemark initiation, like a trial day for everybody. He came every day for a week, and everybody tested it, and I just loved it. There was something about it. And a year went by, and within that year I went on eBay and I found some telemark equipment, and I practiced. At this point I was about 17 years old, so this is quite a few years later, but I found some telemark equipment, and I practiced on the indoor snow domes, because slowly these dry ski slopes are being replaced as actual indoor snow ski slopes in the UK now. So I was practicing on the indoor slopes, and I went back a year later and I looked up Seb, and I said, hey, can I have a telemark lesson? And it took some persuading, because you can probably imagine how a Frenchman would feel in April when the snow is terrible. He's exhausted after 4 months of teaching every day, and this 17-year-old in a race suit turns up wanting a telemark lesson. I mean, he was not motivated at all. But
that's hilarious.
I persisted. Yeah, I persisted, and I had this lesson with him, and I said to him, so can you help me be the best in the world? I want to do this. I want to be world champ. And we've pretty much been working on that ever since. And now Seb is the British team coach. And life has been a bit bonkers ever since.
Wow. That's so crazy. So Seb's still your coach, and he taught you how to telemark ski?
Yes. Yeah. And actually at the time he was coaching the French junior team. So, I mean, I didn't have any idea. I was just pushing my luck, which I probably do more than I should. But yeah, it was just total luck. Just right place at the right time. That's
amazing. So your telemark experience started with eBay, bought telemark gear on dry slopes or snow domes.
Sounds shit, really, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's okay though. No, but that's what's interesting is if people out there haven't seen these snow domes, it's basically like what you would imagine. I mean, it's like an enclosed slope. I mean, and they're really only one slope most of the time, right? A single slope?
Yeah. Yeah, and the majority in the UK are about 200 meters long. There's one in Europe which is a kilometer, and they actually host slalom events in that snow dome. So, yeah, I mean, it's crazy how the industry is changing as well.
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So, the other thing is did you kind of simultaneously get into telemark racing as you learned to telemark ski then?
I always set out to be a telemark racer. It was always my intent, because I was an alpine racer. I even did ski cross for a season, but from the very beginning, I always had this. I like to compete, and it gives me a thrill. There's a real rush. There's adrenaline with it, and I like to improve and do better than I did before. And I guess there's a kind of obsessive compulsive nature to that, but it really, I don't know, it really motivates me. And I knew really from the beginning that, telemark racing is a thing. Right, that's interesting. There's something in that for me. And it sparked something in me.
That's interesting. Well, that makes sense though, because you had like the alpine background, and it seems like with what kind of snow conditions you're dealing with, that's, racing's probably, putting up gates is probably fairly common for most people. Like, it's not like you're free riding in the snow dome. You know what I mean?
Yes, exactly.
Maybe moguls. Britain probably has a mogul team, I would think too.
Yeah, actually, the mogul team is really good. They're starting to get World Cup podiums now, and yeah, they're doing great stuff. I'm actually quite good friends with there's a family of them. There's twin brother and sister, and then another sister, and they have also other guys competing with them. But they grew up in France, which is quite common for a lot of British winter sport athletes. You find often they have either dual nationality, whereby they've grown up actually in the mountains, and it's much more rare probably to find a Brit that really grew up in Britain that's competing at a high level. And it is very tough. It really is. And even if you've grown up in the mountains, it's super tough. The mountains do not forgive you. You need to be ready.
Yeah, that's and I mean, that is like such a stark contrast. If actually, I haven't been to the UK, but I mean, obviously seeing pictures of it, we're not talking a mountainous region per se, know. So we're not. The contrast of France is like pretty dramatic, in terms of like, the Alps and stuff. Do you have dual citizenship yourself then?
No, I don't. I am just English, or British. So yeah, and with Brexit now, I mean, I don't want to talk about politics, but that may or may not be trickier to spend as long in France. I mean, I really have no idea.
Oh, right. Yeah, that'll for sure affect things, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Just because of the border stuff.
Yes.
Have you had... Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, for the moment, it's fine. But again, it just puts uncertainty out there, and it's just something else to adapt to, isn't it, really?
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, have you living in Chamonix, have you learned French then?
I have learned French, yes.
Nice.
It feels weird to actually... I always have imposter syndrome when I say, yes, I speak French, but I mean, yes, I speak French. I should just own it, but I don't know, something in me that says, you don't speak French, what are you talking about? But there we are.
Yeah, no, well, that's helpful there. I mean, the few times I have been to France, I it helps because I can tell in like most countries though, if you speak another language, and it helps. And I think in France too, it's like even if you make the effort, people are they're stoked. You know, they're like, okay. They might not let you in on maybe the fact that they speak English right off the bat. They'll make you suffer a little bit, which is fine. And then and then you speak a little French, and they're like, okay, that's terrible. I'll speak English with you. So
yeah, but they definitely appreciate the effort. That seems to be a pattern.
For sure. Yeah, and it's funny because I speak Portuguese. I used to live in Brazil, and anybody speaking French is the hardest though. That's why I was curious if you knew it, because of all the Latin languages, at least for yeah, that's a tough one. Like the pronunciations.
Do you think?
Oh, they're tricky. Yeah. They're tricky.
I have a lot of words I avoid and I speak around because I just cannot get I just can't pronounce them, and I have to dance about and make other people say it for me. I can't make myself understood with certain words. But
that's funny.
I mean, I have an English accent when I'm speaking French, so
totally.
Yeah, and you're always a bit conscious of it as well. You always feel like, oh God, they hear that I'm English, and I want them to just think I'm French, but of course I'm not French, so
it's hard to hide under the accent for sure.
Yeah, immediately they clock. So I should just go with it.
That's funny. So how many years have you been living in Chamonix in the winter?
Yeah, so I spend just the winters in Chamonix, but that will be, well, if you include my days at the British Ski Academy, because at the time the academy was also based in Les Houches. That would be since I was 13. I'm 27 now, so 14 years.
Wow.
That's a long time. Oh, I feel old.
Nah, I
don't like this.
You're still very young, but that's quite a bit of time there. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot of time. I mean, it feels like a second home now. So.
Yeah, and sorry, what's the name? Les Houches?
Les Houches. Yeah,
Les Houches.
It's part of the Chamonix Valley, but it's probably, I mean, it's less Chamonix, if you know what I mean. It's not so steep, and there's a certain crowd of people that come to Chamonix because they want to ski insane steep routes, and Les Houches is not like that. Les Houches is pretty much a normal resort if you look at the rest of France or the world. So it's not so extreme, but you have awesome views, like really cool.
Yeah, we were there 3 winters ago, and we were there pretty late, so the town was dead. I think we were there I want to say May 5 or something. I mean, it was it was late, but we skied the Vallée Blanche with half a meter of snow. It was amazing. It just happened to snow when we got there.
But do you know what? May is the best time. My coach Seb is always saying the best skiing is at the beginning of May, end of April in Chamonix. And
it was.
I'm not surprised to hear that.
Oh, that's cool. We hit it just right. We came from the Black Shoes Festival in Teen, and then came to Chamonix and I think we only skied the one. That's why I was curious, because I feel like I remember seeing a sign for other ski resorts, but it's so dramatic in that valley. I mean, it's not like it's like you're just looking at these walls of mountains around you, you know? So I don't remember seeing a lot. And then, we were only there a couple days. Beautiful, beautiful place though. And I can't imagine midwinter. I mean, we kind of walked around, but a lot of the shops were closed kind of in that that shoulder season, after winter. So yeah,
it's spectacular. It really is.
Yeah, that's amazing. Do you we hung out with some really cool folks. Did you ever meet Peter from Rabbit on the Roof? Have you met him before?
I have met him, and actually Seb's skis were built by him.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he's so talented.
Oh, man.
And he goes into the shop where my boyfriend works quite often, But I don't know if you heard, actually, his place burnt down a few years ago.
Yep, totally. Funny enough, in our shop, we have a piece of his shop, of the burnt wood, in the Freehill Life shop here in Salt Lake.
Oh wow!
Yeah,
that's a claim. That's cool.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It's a Telemark. I can't remember if he made. It was a gift given to us by the Black Shoes, which is that group over in Teen, and he's friends with those guys. And yeah, so it's kind of. I'll have to see if I can put a picture, send you a picture of it. But it's like a metal piece of artwork of a Telemark kind of sculpture that's in not a huge one, maybe like hand size, and then it's sticking into a piece of wood, of burnt wood from his shop. So
whoa,
yeah, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, he's so talented, isn't he? I've seen his skis are just beautiful.
Yeah, and for those of you that don't know what we're talking about, Rabbit on the Roof is and I'm blanking on Peter's last name. He's a American expat that lives in Chamonix and builds these incredible handcrafted skis. And when, there's a lot of you hear that these days, like handcrafted, but most of these are like each ski is like one of a kind. And some of them are, I think they're even like single pieces of wood. Like they're not laminated, or they're like interesting laminates how he does it. So check out Rabbit on the Roof. And, that was when you started saying Seb. I didn't know if you were talking about. Do you know Seb Mayer by chance? Have you met him?
Well, we're both sponsored by the same binding company.
Yep.
With the M equipment, Meggio. So I've had a few exchanges with him, but I don't know if I've ever met Seb in person. I may have come across him, but it would have been at an event when there was loads of people.
Yeah.
And then you just. Your head just goes blank afterwards. But I know he's a really awesome skier.
He's a ripper. That guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's right. I forgot M equipment stuff. That makes sense. And I think he's over in Verbier, so that would make sense. And that is kind of what we were talking about before we hopped on the podcast. I mean, there's quite a bit of. I don't like to use the word division because that makes it sound like people don't want to hang out with each other. But the race scene, generally, at least in my experience, it's really separate from some of the free ride stuff and like even festivals, even though you guys kind of mix up some of the festivals over there with racing, which is a cool thing. I mean, do you feel that way, or is that just me? Like, it always seems like racing's over there, and then like you got festivals over there, and then there's like free ride stuff. And it's like, that's why I was excited to have you on here, because it kind of helps bridge that gap that, I don't think a lot of people realize that there's World Cup level telemark racing in the world.
Yeah. And when you see it for the first time, I think it's mind blowing. You don't realize really what is possible just in a telemark turn until you see the best guys skiing GS and jumping as well. And it doesn't do it justice, I don't think, on the video, because the jumps are huge. You clear 25, 30 meters in some cases, and also the skating as well. But I know what you mean. And it's funny because we're all so passionate about telemark skiing, yet we all come at it from such a different angle. And that is quite interesting, and it would be cool to draw everybody together, because I think there's those people that don't want to wear race suits because it's not cool in their world, or and likewise, actually, I think everyone thinks off-piste skiing is cool because off-piste skiing is really fun and it is really cool, but as a racer, we have such a training schedule, and we have to follow this tour that goes all over Europe and in some cases the US. I think it's just we don't have time, and when we do have time, we're just at home or we're not in the right place at the right time. So it's difficult to manage everything, but for sure it would be really cool to have everybody in one place, because even if racing's not your thing or free ride's maybe not your thing, or freestyle or whatever it is you want to do on telemark skis, in the end, we're all still curious about each other's equipment setup or what you love about the sport or what it brings to your life. At some point, there's a human element that's really interesting. And the fact we're spread all over the world and we have this common passion, there's a huge power in that. And I'm not sure that we harness it at the moment.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. That's a great way to put it. And I agree. I think telemark, it's an something's attracting each of us to the telemark turn that makes us all a little bit different. I would like to say it's not, I always say it's a personality choice. It's not a logical choice. Most people aren't looking at telemark in any discipline, whether it's racing or you're just like at your local hill and they're like, that looks super easy, I'm just going to do that. And especially, and you brought up a good point. I mean, telemark racing, and maybe to help, there's probably a lot of people listening right now. One, they're like, I've had some guests from like the late 70s, early 80s race scene, but that's a very different time. And maybe could you explain to people a little bit about what telemark racing entails at the World Cup level right now? You've got, I think, and tell me if I'm wrong, you've got GS, you've got sprint, for like the full length sprint, and then you've got dual sprint now. Is that correct?
It's almost correct. So the GS has been cut. No more GS.
Oh, really?
But we have 3 disciplines. So each of the 3 disciplines has 4 elements, and those 4 elements are the GS, the giant slalom, the jump with the clearance line, the skate, and the bank turn, the 360, the loom, the wrap, whatever you want to call it.
The Rapaloosa.
The Rapaloosa, yeah. So, but they all have those 4 elements. And you have the sprint, which is a time trial, 2 runs. Each run is about 1 minute, 1 minute 30 max. You have the classic, which is 1 time trial. And usually that's 2 minutes to 3 minutes. So it's really grueling. And then you have the parallel or the dual sprint, however you want to call it. You have a qualification run. Generally, it's between 40 seconds to 1 minute. So average about 50 seconds per run. You have the qualification, and then you have head-to-head knockouts. So, for example, 1 versus 16, 2 versus 15, 3, 14, and so on. And then we do also have the team event for the World Cup finals and the World Championship. So you have normally 2 men, 1 woman, and it's if you win, if Great Britain win 2 out of 3, we go through to the next round. If we lose 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 3, then we're out. If that makes sense. So basically, there are 3 disciplines, 1 with a team event. But yeah, so that's the setup. Do you guys?
So each event now, because I mentioned like, and yeah, I obviously am a little dated because back the 2 seasons I tried racing back. I mean, this is 2002, right? This is a long time ago. They still had GS in the format, which you could ski with regular poles because there was no skate section. But it sounds like everything now you're skiing with Nordic poles, correct?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. So
I was just gonna
GS skis, of course.
Yeah. So just to kind of give like a brief and a little brief overview, like of it, and I want to get into more of your specific equipment, but for those of you that have never seen this level of racing, most of these racers are on like alpine race stock style skis with telemark bindings, but they're using a Nordic style pole, meaning they're much longer because there's skate. When she says there's a skate, there's actually a Nordic skate. And so the elements that are involved, like Jasmine was talking about, is You have a skate section that includes Nordic skating. You have a jump, which includes, like you guys have heard me talk in the podcast, jumping was a big part of telemark in the 1800s even, but you've got to jump a certain distance. You have to land in a telemark position or there's a penalty. And what am I missing? Turns. Yeah, I guess that's it. Turns, skate, and jump. I mean, those are the three elements, right?
Exactly. And the wrap is used to take you from the GS speed into you try and keep as much speed as possible, but it leads you basically into the skate, and you must cross your own path. So it's a loop. You can't. It's difficult to explain on a podcast, but you can't enter one side and go off the back side of the loop. You actually have to cross your own line of skiing. So it's a full 360.
Yeah. So the Rapaloosa, and it's a little hard to explain, but if you picture a massive embankment that is usually kind of built almost in like a 180 fashion. So you enter the one side and then come around and then exit. And like you said, come out of it and then cross your own track. But and seeing the sprint, they didn't have that, or the dual parallel sprint. They didn't have that. But now the Rapaloosa, some people are you could potentially enter head to head with another competitor, right?
I mean, that happens. So there's two of you in the wrap at the same time.
So you're trying to get the line first, the good line first.
Yeah. So you got the red course, you got the blue course, and you're basically trying to get to the loom first, the wrap first. Sorry, I call it a loom. So that's the French word for it. But you're trying to get there so you can choose the position, you can exit where you want to exit, and generally you come out of the wrap and then you see the plaque in front of you. So if you're on the blue course, you look out for the blue number. And if the blue number says 2, means you have 2 penalties and you have to do a longer skate section compared to if you're on the red course and you have 0, you take the shorter skating route. So your skiing penalties, or the penalties you collected at the jump, you'll pay for in the skate. So it's also a case of keeping the good technique and being as quickly as possible, because it can be that you are last into the wrap. So you were slower, but you had no penalties, so you overtake in the skate. So it's a very exciting discipline, and it makes very good TV. It's brilliant to watch. If anybody wants to see what I'm talking about, you just have to YouTube it, because it's unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and that's the other thing that Jazz is bringing up is the penalties. And this is what makes telemark racing unique from alpine racing, is it's not only a timed event, but it's a judged event. And so you have various judges throughout the course that are, I guess without getting too detailed, they're looking for smooth transition. Tell me if I'm wrong, because this might be dated, Jazz, but they're looking for smooth transitions from telemark to telemark with no pausing between. And they're also looking that you're maintaining a certain level of boot spacing from heel to toe with the turn. So in other words, they want to make sure you're not making an alpine turn with your heel up, with your feet together. Is that a good explanation?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it is. And the technical explanation with the size of the telemark you need is your own boot's length between your front heel and your back toe. And it's quite easy to recognize because you can see with the angle of the inside knee. So if the inside knees are at the same height or same level,
yep,
then generally you're not making a proper, I say proper, but a proper telemark turn, and you will.
That's very British of you. A proper telemark turn. I like it.
Well, yeah, maybe not completely understood by the US guys.
That's all good. We've got people from all over, so I like that. No, but so this leads me into a question that I really wanted to ask you is, and you mentioned it, it's great for TV. I think that's why the parallel sprint, the head-to-head action was probably created to a certain extent, because there's been this push for many, many, many years to try to make this an Olympic sport. And where I kind of follow this from the peripheral of the whole thing, but I'm curious, like, what do you think's holding that back? Because you guys have a World Cup level, and there's amazing athletes. There's people training full time and skiing, and there's obviously a World Cup tour. Do you think it'll make it to the Olympics at some point?
It's my personal belief that it will. And I think the reason, I mean, again, this is only my opinion, but there's a combination of factors holding it back. One of them being that the Winter Olympic Games is already over its quota for amount of sports it can have. So I think they said, I can't remember the details, but 100 sports, and they have something like, not totally different sports, but different events. So slalom, GS, Super G, basically 100 different events. And in order to add telemark, essentially they would need to remove another sport, which is difficult politically, and it has to be very, very justified.
The curlers are listening to you right now. Like they're getting worried. I can tell.
But the thing is, curling is so popular. People love watching it.
I feel like,
and I think
curling's like you sit back with a beer and kind of watch it, and it's enjoyable that way.
Yeah, it can get intense. I mean, I get a bit stressed watching it. I think like cheering on the Brits as well, and it's not your everyday thing either. So it's kind of cool to watch something like that. And have you ever done it? Have you tried it?
No, I've always wanted to. I feel like I'd be a broom guy personally. So I don't know why. I just think the broom guy looks pretty cool. But I don't even know again, the curlers are probably out there like, dude, it's not a broom. Come on. Like
I don't know what it's called either, but I do know what you mean.
Yeah,
I tried it once, and it's really difficult. And the stone, again, I don't know if it's actually called stone, but there's a handle.
Yeah, I think it's a stone.
Handle and stone. It's so heavy. And it's so temperamental as well. If you get it a little bit wrong, it goes really wrong.
If you think about it, there's a drop knee turn happening in there. Maybe there's like some combinations of teams here that we could do.
Yeah, maybe we've both been barking up the wrong tree. We needed to have been curling all this time.
Yeah, no, that's funny. But that makes so that's like one of the biggest dilemmas is just amount of events and trying to get it in there. I had always heard over the years that the fact that it's the difficulty of having a subjective judged event mixed with a timed event could have been a dilemma. Am I making that up? Or
for me, that's not one of the issues. I mean, they do need to. Yeah, I mean, it's a totally different because it combines the two. Normally, the sports have one or the other, but we have this mixture. But telemark ski racing, just in its nature, is a bit like a triathlon. So we're already combining several other sports. So we're not as good at skating, in theory, as the cross-country skiers, and we're not as good at skiing or GS or as fast as the alpine GS skiers. But our average across ski jumping, skiing and skating, I would imagine, is probably a higher average, because also with the jump as well, there's a 3-second penalty if you don't make the line. So in many cases, the race is won or lost at the jump. So it's really important in telemark ski racing to be strong across the board. So that's also something that doesn't necessarily come across. You have some guys that are really good jumpers, skaters and skiers. So it's about filling the gap and putting the average across all those elements as high as possible. And of course, you need to do that with as few penalties as possible as well. So it's really not easy. It's tough.
Yeah, that's a lot to worry about in one in one go. How do you train for? I guess, yeah. How are you train? I'm curious with your training regimen, like, both during the season and outside of the season. Are you practicing like Nordic technique? You got to get that V1, V2 alternate in there, right? All that stuff.
Yeah, so you need to be good at changing gear, if you like, on Nordic skiing. So I do a lot of roller skiing, a lot of cross-country skiing in winter. There's a lot of intervals and different length of intervals as well, because we have these different disciplines with different duration. There's work in the gym, so strength, power, that kind of thing. But you also have to have really good proprioception, so balance, coordination, technique as well. You have to have, good technique. So as many different sports in summer as possible. I like to trampoline. I've even attempted gymnastics,
oh,
if you can call it that. Yeah, but it's as many different stresses you can put on the body to prepare you for everything. Slacklining as well is another popular one amongst telemark athletes. But yeah, mixing it up. Downhill mountain biking. I can't do that in the UK, but I rode bike to build endurance. So there's so many elements to it, because you need to recover between racing bouts, but also just day to day. So you have to have such a base of fitness. You have to be strong and powerful, have endurance, and be able to work at a really high intensity. So it's difficult to tick all the boxes.
Yeah. Now, are you do you have the ability to train full? I mean, are you in a position where you can train year round, and like this is what you're doing full time?
It's pretty much what I do full time. I've been very lucky with personal sponsors, and various companies that have helped me so much, that I am able to actually ski almost full time. I mean, from October this season, I was out on the glaciers. I'm always kind of cutting corners, trying to make things as cheap as possible, and I'm not flush, shall we say, but I'm really able to train properly, as are most of the top men and women in the world now. But most people do work alongside as well. So I'm working in the ESF, so the ski school here in Les Houches, to top up with cash. And I was studying until last summer. I actually graduated last summer. So
congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and it took me a while because it is so demanding, so grueling to keep up the level you need to keep. So
it seems to be that's a common theme with skiers most places I know. The education sort of takes a little bit longer. Yeah,
it did with me, definitely. But
what did you do? Did you do something that kind of complements your ski stuff in school?
Yeah, so very cliche, but I studied sport, and within that we did sports psychology, we did physiology, and then a mix of nutrition and other various modules. So it was really applicable. I could really use it as an athlete, but also a lot of people study sport and they maybe don't end up working in sport, and that's also fine. But I really feel that I will always be involved in sport my whole life. So for me, that degree was quite valuable for what I need to know and how I want to approach things.
Yeah, I think when I was looking at your website before the podcast, I think I noticed you have your own sports psychologist, don't you?
Yeah, and I actually started studying because of him. So I think, so my parents, when I was 18, they moved to this town in the UK called Ipswich, and I'd grown up in the next town along, Colchester. And yeah, I mean, it's not drastic, but this actually, I went from living in the countryside in the UK to living in a big town. And in this big town, there was this university. And I contacted the university and I said, hey, if you need a guinea pig, I am available for any fitness testing, because fitness testing is actually quite expensive to have, like your VO2 max. And I wanted all this data to measure, okay, where am I at? How am I going to improve? And the University of Suffolk, they got back to me and they said, yeah, of course, you can come be a guinea pig, come in for some fitness testing, because they're always looking for subjects for research studies and that kind of thing. And the guy in charge actually said, do you need a sports psychologist? And I thought, well, yeah, maybe, probably, I don't know. And he recommended Manos, who I've been working with for years. And he's Greek, so of course the Greeks know about psychology. And we just hit it off, and yeah, he's changed my life. Honestly, he's helped me so much, and I think it's really important, not just for sport, but for life, just to, make sure you're taking care of yourself, and to find a way to manage the pressures, not just of competing, but of life as well, because we're all under this increasing pressure of, I don't know, do we have enough money? Are we thin enough? Are we this? Are we liked, etc.? And it's not easy to just be human sometimes. So he's absolutely transformed my life, and I've been very lucky to work with him.
That's amazing. So it's almost like you maybe approached it as like something that would help in sport, but you've really seen it kind of cross over just like general mental health, and then kind of how that goes back and forth across the sport. Am I kind of understanding that right?
Yeah, exactly. It started off as a one-way thing. Okay, how will I use this to be a better athlete? And in the end, you realize that actually sport is bringing a lot to my life. And, it's a really intertwined thing. You can't just, how do I put this? However you are in the start gate on the race hill, whatever problems manifest, they exist also in your life, but you don't, it's not necessarily that obvious, because, life is busy and life goes on, and perhaps it doesn't bother you from day to day, but the moment you really have to pull the best out of yourself and there's pressure and it's intense, you need to know that you can trust yourself and you're going to do the job, and you're going to keep doing the job, because, and also as a Brit, sometimes you feel you have, a kind of imposter syndrome. Like, should I be here? What am I doing here? This is not what any of my friends are doing or any of my family are doing. It's actually completely crazy to put 2 planks of wood on your feet and chuck yourself down a hill that's steep and icy. If you think about it too much, it just doesn't make any sense. But there we go. So he's helped me a lot, not only with life, but also approaching competition and trying to improve and do my best.
That's amazing. I love hearing that. And it's cool to, I think that's what's fun talking about you, is just seeing like that level of, you're obviously putting a lot of effort into improving, what you're doing, and, from psychology to training full time to, whatever else. I guess, one of the questions I kind of had too is, we talked about kind of just training and obviously just the psychology of it. I'm curious what kind of equipment setup you're using these days. I know you mentioned you're on the M equipment. I think that's a really interesting binding choice. I think I wanted to kind of touch on that because you're actually racing on a tech-toe binding, and maybe walk us through your setup and just any insights on what you're racing on right now would be really cool.
So with telemark racing, there's no specific regulation on your plate, so you can have whatever you want
on the riser plate. You mean
riser plate? Yeah, is that what you call it? Okay, a riser plate.
Yeah, we call them risers, and you guys tend to, like, for people that don't understand, is a racer, a lot of times what they'll do is to get better angulation on their skis, they put these risers on top of the ski that they then mount the binding to. So just a little tidbit there for you non-racers out there.
And often they're double mounted. So you have I ski on Blossom. So let's say you have the Blossom ski and then you have the Blossom alpine plate. Often what people do is put the pink Rotterfeller riser and then Rotterfeller on. So you end up being a good 4 to 5 centimeters up. But with my setup, so what I did is I calculated the how do I word this? The angle at which my boot would touch the snow. So if you imagine you have a huge angulation, you need to make sure that your boot does not intersect the snow before you've finished angulating. Otherwise you boot out and you can't finish the turn. So I had to make sure that I was high enough. That was the first point. The second one was the length of the plate. So my plates are actually carbon fibre and they're really stiff. There's really no bend in them. So I had to make the riser plate to ski length as short as possible, because even just adding an extra centimetre makes it so much stiffer. It's unbelievable. I mean, carbon fibre really, really doesn't bend.
Oh, because you don't want to change the stiffness of your ski flex. Is that what I'm hearing?
Exactly, yeah. And because we have the skate element, I think you need it to be as light as possible. I mean, not everyone goes for that. So some people opt for double stack, heavier, more stability, and they keep their balance perhaps better in the giant slalom section. But for me, I thought, okay, let's really use the power of the Meggio, which is it's lighter, to my advantage here. So we got the carbon fibre. I've got carbon fibre printed, so 3D printing, but with carbon fibre heel pieces. And then we set the Meggio on the plate, so the actual inside of the plate is hollow, if you can believe that. So the screws that attach the Meggio are not in any way pulling on the screws that take the riser to the ski. So, and this was a whole summer of work, and it was almost like a full-time job in itself, just the calculations. And I had help. I was not alone doing this. I had a lot of help.
This is your engineering degree you got, like, on the side.
Who knew that I had to be an engineer as well? So, yeah, but I mean, one of the guys actually that helped me is an engineer at CERN in Switzerland, where they have the collider, and so he's a really clever guy, and he helped me with this whole design and setup. But for me, Meggio, what I like about Meggio is you have this two-way spring system. So as soon as you lift your heel, you have traction, tension, and you can feel that in your hips, in your glutes, and it gives you straight away more control over the ski. Not only that, you have the pin at the front, so you have a more direct ski edge pressure, and the transmission of that energy is faster. Another thing I like is the end of the turn with the springs. Once you relax, the springs actually do part of the work for you, and they help propel you down the hill and accelerate. So the great thing about that as well is because the springs are both ways, it doesn't become stiffer the more you lunge. It's just as stiff at the beginning and throughout. So the lunge is actually it's a consistent tension. There's no dead spot. It's all the time active, and at no point is it getting easier or more difficult to have the position. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, 100%. I'm curious. Are you going with red line springs?
I am with red. Yes, I am.
Do you go with?
And I have the Meggio. And I have the Meggio 3 now. So the tech toe is super strong.
Yeah, that new toe's pretty sweet. So do you lock your toe out when you race?
No.
You don't? Really?
No. I did when I had the 2.1 for a few races, but that was actually, I had some setup issues and that was my fault. I did something wrong. But that's another story. But with the Meggio 3, I'm sure to have my foot flat, and I'm really happy. I'm really happy with the setup, and I actually think it's the future of the sport. The insert, the tech toe.
Honestly, when I saw you went to Meggio, I was like, kind of confused, honestly, because I'm always like, it's interesting here. I'm glad we're having this talk because I was so fascinated that there was racers on tech toe, because Pierre and I had talked about this years ago, and people were like, tech toe's the future, and I was like, I don't know, like a cage toe to me it makes more sense for like the average person. So when I saw you get on tech toe for racing, I was like, what? Like, it really threw me off, because I was like, in a good way, it kind of like showed how you could be an aggressive skier, and like, people are always like, well, am I going to pop out of these things, and I think anybody that's skied them, and obviously you're saying that too, I mean, you guys are putting an enormous amount of force on these things, and not, the toe portion's not the problem. If anything, it's like, I could see if you hook a gate or something, like, the releasability factor is probably really good too for those. So
yeah, and also you want it to release. If you crash, you don't want the thing to stay on your foot.
Yeah.
But equally, you want it to stay on your foot when you need it to stay on your foot. So, and that's, even alpine freestyle skiers, they have the dins up crazy high just to not pop out.
Yeah.
But often racers go beyond what is safely recommended for the general public. So whatever the racers are doing, just tone it down if you're skiing on the piste, or you're not absolutely going for it. But for me, I think they're brilliant, and the decision to change was not necessarily a logical one, and since it's become more logical, and I've thought about it a lot, and it's quite a big ask emotionally to ski on those bindings, not for any other reason than I'm nearly the only one doing it, and I wasn't the first either. There's a French girl that has been competing on them for years, and there's also a few of the other British guys on them, but it's more difficult to say, okay, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to commit to this. And if it does or it doesn't work out, then my goodness, it's on me. And that's actually the hardest thing, because it would be much easier to do, follow the setup that most other racers have, which is Rottefeller. Mm-hmm. But I did ski on Rottefeller for years, and I was very happy with Rottefeller too. But the day I tried Meggio, I had no intention of racing on Meggio. I just thought, let's try it because it's interesting and I'm curious. I want to see what it's all about. I did one run and I said to Seb, oh dear, I need to change. These are magic. And it was just pure joy. And I have so much joy to ski on those bindings. And Actually, nobody really asks me, Jazz, why do you ski on those bindings? The answer is joy. I enjoy to ski on them, and it's a pleasure. You feel the ski, you feel the movement, and it's as simple as that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's it's really cool hearing you say that. And I'm glad that you're enjoying them because the tech toe doesn't necessarily make a whole, it's interesting how you talked about the connection at the tech toe. There might be ways to achieve that without a tech toe in the future, but I do agree with you. Like the engagement of activity from the onset of dropping your knee, I think that's a huge factor. The fact that you can increase stiffness of the spring, but have it separate from the releasability is brilliant. I think that's an amazing feature of that binding. And then just all the different spring options, from like a red line with the inner spring to red line without the inner spring to, there's like 20 some options, with different combinations. Yeah, that's cool. It's fun talking to you about it. Cause like we geek out and talk about all this gear, but it's really interesting to hear how you're looking at it from a racing perspective of just lightweight and then combining it with like some carbon fiber modifications to the ski and risers. It's man, we might have to get you on a gear podcast, Jazz.
I would love that. I could talk for hours about telemark and equipment, everything like that. So
I love that.
Anytime.
Yeah, no, we'll for sure dig back in. Before we wrap up, I wanted to add, so I know you've got, your aspirations, like I'm sure a lot of racers, like you really want to be a world champion. You have a podium at a world championship. Is that correct?
That is correct.
That's amazing. So I know this is probably a strange year, but is the World Cup happening this year?
We returned from the first round Monday night. So we had 6 races in 5 days in Germany. Yeah. So the answer is yes, it is happening.
How did it go?
I don't know how much longer it's going to be possible because of restrictions in Europe, but we've at least raced.
How did your first race go?
I had some not so good days, but I did manage a second place in the classic discipline on the final day. So the week for me ended on a high. And it's always good to be back in the start gate, especially now. We're so lucky to just be on skis, let alone, competing. So the organisers, the committee, everybody involved did an amazing job to get it off the ground and get it running.
I love that. That's great. Well, where can people watch telemark racing? Like, what's the best way if people are interested in watching World Cup? Is there a streaming service that they offer now, like the FIS or anything like that?
So normally there is a live stream, Tele-Ho, but because the budget is somewhat altered this year, they're not so present at the events. But for all the information and all the updates and everything you need to know, and if there is in fact a stream, you'll hear about it through the FIS Telemark social media channels. So anybody that wants to find out about telemark racing, head to FIS or FIS Telemark, and you'll find out everything you need to know.
I love that. That's cool. And then where can people find out more about you online?
Again, probably on social media. So Jazz Telemark, Jaz Telemark, all one word. And I'm on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I don't know, LinkedIn, YouTube.
Everywhere.
Yeah, I can't cope with TikTok, mind you, but pretty much everything else is, you can find me. Jazz Telemark.
Yeah, and I'll put links in the notes so people can check it out, and I'll put the FIS links too, so people can have kind of a direct way of finding that stuff.
Perfect.
I love that. Well, I am so glad we got to talk. This has been awesome. I know we'll have to do this again because I'm already like, oh man, there's so much more to talk about with you, from gear to just, I don't know. We covered a lot of good topics today, so I appreciate you taking the time.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, good luck in your World Cup endeavors, and hope we will, fingers crossed, that they will continue for the 2021 season. And hopefully you'll get that world championship and we can have you back on to talk about that.
Yeah, that'd be wicked. Thank you, Josh.
Awesome. All right, Jazz, we'll talk to you later.
Take care.
See ya.
Bye.
Another fine guest having on the Free Heel Life podcast. I'm really stoked that Jasmine took the time to talk with me, and that was a really fun conversation. It's great to have that race community, and I think that was a really good introduction for people to kind of get a feel for what's going on out there. And, you know, sometimes in the past, like, I haven't really covered the race stuff as much, just because, you know, there was so many other things to do. And I think now with the podcast, it's nice because it just gives more opportunity with being able to do one of these a week. And there's so many fantastic athletes out there, and they're all passionate about telemark skiing, like we all are. And what I thought was really cool about that is not only did it kind of get us into the race thing, but I loved how she talked about gear. And from a performance standpoint, it's fun to listen to how she is approaching her equipment and the demands of the equipment under those circumstances. Like, I can't emphasize, like she said, sometimes you can't tell when you're watching stuff on video, you know, or TV, but the type of skiing these athletes are doing in World Cup races is incredible. I mean, there's a lot of force going on to those binding skis boots, and it's really telling, I think, to kind of hear what types of modifications that people are doing in that realm. So I appreciate her kind of digging into that and whatnot. So I'm sure we'll have more racers on in the future, and hopefully their season continues and we can maybe pick up on some of the race action over in Europe this year and here in the States as well. So lots of good stuff, and I'm psyched that we got to have that conversation. So hope you guys have a great week out there. As always, if you'd like to support the content directly with a little extra donation of your choice, you can hit up paypal.me/freeheellife. Check out our online telemark shop if you do not live in Salt Lake at freeheellife.com. Or if you live in Salt Lake, we're open Tuesday through Friday, noon until 7 p.m., Saturday, 10 a.m. until 7 p.m., closed Sunday and Monday. We would love to be your preferred telemark shop and answer your questions and help you get the gear you need and help fix the gear that you have and all the good stuff. You can check out articles and more information at telemarkskier.com. You can always email me at podcast@freeheellife.com. And this is just so fun, you guys. I really appreciate you listening. I appreciate you supporting our shop. I hope you have a fantastic week. And until next week, spread telemark always, my friends.